Hey guys, Tehnoobcake here. This is my review of Strangers at Paradise. Now, as of recording this, I have been through the whole main story on the hard difficulty. Off stream, I've started on chaos difficulty, and I'm now 206 item level, 204 item level. So I've experienced most of the game. I went into it very low expectations. So I will say that is one been taken into account before watching the review. Um, Obviously, this is just me talking. I haven't got any game footage or anything like that, so apologies for the execution of the review. But we will order things in a certain structure, and to begin with, let's go with the story because obviously it's a Final Fantasy game, and people expect a lot of Final Fantasy. Now, I went into it with very low expectations. I will be completely honest with that. We all saw the demos, we all saw the trailers, so I didn't have too much hope for the story. And I'm a long-term FF fan, so I understand the actual lore of a Final Fantasy One game. So obviously, it was relevant to me in regards to that. Now, I will admit, for the first two-thirds of the story, it was very meme-worthy. It wasn't particularly coherent. It just felt like they were throwing random cutscenes out of nowhere. And none of them really conjoined for a greater narrative. Now, the last third of the story, I feel actually was relevant to the Final Fantasy One world, so that was actually a pleasant surprise by the end. Now, despite the fact that it is very memey and it is very kind of all over the place, it is still a worthy game of paying attention to the story at least once. I wouldn't advise skipping over the story just to try bum rush at the end of the game. Maybe in subsequent saves, but really, I think at least for your first experience, you should try experience the story without skipping cutscenes or anything like that. I did enjoy my time playing the story. I played it with my housemate. I don't know how he felt about it, but I know that it was a good story, really, in like the lightest sense of the word. If you go into it expecting a masterpiece like maybe Lord of the Rings or something like that, then you're probably going into it with too high expectations. But bit of casual fun, a bit of a week's play with some friends, something like that. It's definitely a good game for that. Now, one of my big problems with the story, however, is the fact that as I say, was playing it co-op, and with the co-op, you have to create rooms and go into the missions, and it's overall kind of fine. But then in some of the story missions, every now and then it forces you into a solo bit, and these solo bits last like 2 minutes, so it's like it really was pointless. Like even that is mostly load times, so it's kind of felt pointless. And then you have to recreate the room for co-op and stuff like that. And at the end of the game, you also um, are forced to do it solo. There is story reasons that I'm not going to really spoil because I'm trying not to be too spoilery. But they stop you from doing it with teammates, and it's a little rough. Obviously, if you want to know more and you don't care about spoilers, you can go watch my series. This will be in the same playlist as the series, so you can watch it there. Um, that's about all I have to say about the story without really going into so many details to spoil it. So yeah, so that is definitely something I say. Pay attention to it for at least your first run, and then after that, see how you feel. Now, the second thing would be the co-op, as I say. Um, I don't like the room system. I wish that you could just start a lobby and like it's good enough, but it's the fact that I have to keep creating one like after those solo missions, as I said. It can be a little jarring sometimes in the middle of a gameplay. There's not really too much else to say. That I didn't have any problems with like connection or anything like that, so it runs quite stably. So if you plan to play it with friends, then that's good. I've not played it with randomers yet. I am intending to give that a shot at some point, um, but we'll see how that is. It's definitely a game that I say is more fun with friends, but I think that about most games that are co-op enabled. So take that with whatever grain of salt you wish to take it with. Um, Now onto the gameplay, which is the main bulk of the game, the thing that really draws you in. Um, the combat is phenomenal. I really enjoyed the combat. The job system is really good. I played Breaker and Sage mainly, and it's nice that still leveling up some of the other jobs gives me some abilities for my class. The way it plays is that you have your job where you get like one main ability and sometimes other abilities, like for instance, say jobs that you get a magic and stuff. Um, and then you can switch between black and white magic, and eventually, once you get a certain level, you can get Ultima, which is broken as hell, but you have to obviously do certain shit in order to get the Ultima. Break is really strong, but I play both of them are very slow jobs, so it's very risk to reward, as I like to say, which can be a bit tough on the bosses because they're quite fast. Um, the combat's really fast flowing. Like if you a lot of people have referred to this as like the Final Fantasy Soulsborne-esque game. I wouldn't so much as say that because of how speedy the combat is. Like yes, it's in that same vein of if you fuck up, you die, and you go back a bit. But it's not as slow or punishing as maybe Dark Souls is, if that's what you're expecting. Um, the one of the problems I did have with the game is the fact that the loot just drops like crazy. And for a while I was trying to optimize stats and stuff like that, but then you find that you don't gear up fast enough, and then because of the break gauge system of the game, you end up not being able to do enough damage to break enemies, which means you don't build enough mana because of that's how you get you start with 2 bars of mana, and then as you break enemies and execute them, you get more mana. Your mana gets bigger and bigger until you can have 6 bars. But if your gear, it seems like the break system is based solely on the your item level, so that was not that fun. You just have to kind of optimize gear all the time. Press the optimize button, and it puts whatever's the highest level basically on. And that really is pretty much the way you're going to be playing it, I think, until you reach an item level of 300, which is apparently the cap. I've not reached it yet. I just know from reading up that that is the cap. Um, the smithy's decent. Most of that gear you'll be getting, you'll be dismantling it. You can change stats on the gear, and you can eventually upgrade those stats and upgrade affinity. I have had a little go with the smithing thingy. I was trying to beat a boss on Chaos 210 item level. And it was I'm not gonna say, but it was weak to holy, so I tried building and it did a lot of poison damage. So I built an armor set, completely resistant to poison, and imbued my weapon with holy. It was a lot of fun seeing the stats that I built execute towards a combat roll. I killed the boss, but then found out that there was 2 more to go, so yikes. It was a boss gauntlet, so I didn't go quite as well as I'd hoped because I was only built for the first boss. And the second boss, I wasn't then resistant to me. But yeah, the system of the gearing, I think, is really fun. Um, Besides the fact that, as I say, you just kind of get overwhelmed with loot, and your inventory is fairly small. So if you don't be clearing it out at the end of every mission, you'll end up pretty quickly getting your inventory is full notification. Jobs, I haven't quite done the mastery system yet. Once you finish the game, you can master jobs, and you have to unlock more levels, and then that's like stat bonuses and stuff like that. I can't really speak on that because I haven't. I've been spending most of my anima crystals on unlocking the chaos difficulty missions because you have to unlock them, which it gets a little grindy, and I think that's my biggest problem with it. Especially as a person who's trying to unlock all of these, you have to kind of pick between leveling your jobs into mastery or um or unlocking other missions. So that's a bit of a downside, I'd say. But overall, combat's really good. The gearing can be a bit jarring, but the systems, there's potential, is what I'll say. Maybe in the DLCs they will go further on that potential. Um, Another side of gameplay that is unfortunately not there is there is not a transmogrification system, so 9% of the time you'll end up looking just completely disorganized in your wardrobe. Which, to most people might not be that important, but I know personally I like to not have my character look like a random, like he just fell in a wardrobe and then fell back out and was just wearing whatever was on top of him. Um, so that is something I've read that the developers say they weren't interested in adding, and I think that's a bit of a letdown to the players. Um, but it's still it's got some good armor sets. I suppose once you reach 300 item level, you can kind of mess around with the smithy to kind of wear what you want. So I hope in for that at least. Music's really good. I don't. As I say, I'm a big Final Fantasy fan, and I go into Final Fantasy expecting at least good music at the bare minimum. But yeah, there's a lot of motifs from other games mixed in there, and it's got some unique, like original motifs for the game. Phenomenal music. I have literally no complaints at that. I actually spend a lot of my time in my free time when I'm not playing Stranger of Paradise, listening to Stranger of Paradise music. So there's that. Um, Other than that, there was a little bit in my own stream where I got a bit scared of the streaming rules, and I ended the stream near the end of the game prematurely because I was worried about what I wasn't allowed to stream. It turns out it was basically just the credits that I wasn't supposed to stream, and so I kind of forgoed my viewers the chance to see the ending. So that was a bit of a disappointment, but that's my own fault. I'm not blaming that on Square Enix. That was my own fault. Although I do wish that the stream rules were a little clearer of what I was supposed to do. Um, Other than that, I think I've touched upon about every subject that I can really think of towards the game. Um, as I said at the beginning, I went into it with low expectations, and I was fully surprised. It's been one of the most enjoyable games I've played in recent times. Period. Um, I'd recommend it to anyone who's interested in buying it or like is thinking of buying it. Definitely get it. It's a lot of fun. And the the if you are cautious about getting it, I would say wait until there's a deal, or wait until it's on offer, anything like that. Wait till its price drops. But definitely, if you're thinking about getting it, it's worthwhile getting, and I would give it my full support. Call it a 9 out of 10 if I was having to rate it. Definitely go buy it if you want. This pretty much wraps up my Strangers of Paradise series. However, I will be streaming the DLC when I eventually get them whenever they're released. And I'll also be joining this playlist, so maybe I'll do a review on each of the DLCs as well. Otherwise, thank you for watching my review, listening to me just ramble on, really. And catch me in my next video.